sick with no heart, wrong talk and a gun spark. What make the youth them so dark, say they not take no talk, wrong talk and a gun spark. What make the youth them so harsh, say them not take no talk. More money than the bigger gun than the sword. Them me put up and pass with the flick of them arm and guns free move wall, look like something from Mars. Look the bling around them make look like some falling stars. Y'all only one bad man and that's where them balls. So them heart get cooler than the middle of the north. Their face are mask, them a move like the talk. Boy, bad a bit, we no pick it up, you know. Throw it down. We no pick it up. No, we don't pick it up, you know. No, we don't pick it up. How them a try for this? 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 Enough, boy.
Wagwan family, you don't know, it's your girl Lynx here, and welcome back to Come Make We Chat. You don't know how we do it out here. Big up all north side, south side, east side, west side. You don't know, big up Daladi, big up yourself, King, Boom Blast, Soul City, all the Soul City family. You don't know, big up Shaky, 50, Dre, Zolja, Bryken, H2O, Tony, Lincoln, Bino, all my CMA family, all my Gen X family. Yeah, man, big up all the 61st family. You don't know, big up Mama Steph, Coco, Denden, Coda, Carter, Fry Eye, Mimi, you don't know, big up everybody out there. Happy Black History Month to everybody, and what a month it has been so far. For all of you out there suffering through your COVID coma, welcome back to Come Make We Chat. And today on Come Make We Chat, what is the topic of the day today now? Today we're talking about Black History Month, and as you know, I always start off with my receipts. And today, as you know, seeing it's Black History Month, I decided to start with a quick search of Black history in Canada. And the first thing that came up here for me was Black history in Canada, the library and archives and so forth. I had showed that to you on the previous show, so that's not what I was focusing on today. However, I am going to click on that link so you can see it in a moment. The second thing up was 23 historical Black Canadians you should know. Definitely an interesting topic. Some of the names up there, some of you here may know from the city. A lot of the people are from the city. And then the next link that I found was noteworthy historical figures, Canada, and then Black Canadians in Wikipedia. Funny, at some point you do have to go to Wikipedia. So let's start with the first, which is Black history in Canada. And when I clicked on that tab, it brought up the same link that I had spoken to you all about on Tuesday. Shout outs to Papa Levy, who had passed through and did a live segment for us on Tuesday. Today, I hope to have a special treat for you with General Genius, Mr. Raptorfoot himself. Unfortunately, we are having some technical difficulties today, because you know, anytime you do something good, the Pope a fight, right? Right. And so it says there has been a steady stream of migration of Black people into Canada via Africa, Europe, the Caribbean, and the United States since the 17th century. The first Black person recorded to arrive in Canada was an African named Matthew DeCoste, who arrived in 1608 to serve as an interpreter for Mi'kmaq, of the Mi'kmaq language, to the governor of Acadia. A few thousand Africans arrived in Canada in the 17th and 18th century as slaves. After the American Revolution, the British gave passage to over 3,000 slaves and free Blacks who had remained loyal to the Crown. These Black loyalists joined many other United Empire loyalists in settlements across the maritime provinces of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Other black slaves joined their loyalist slave owners when they migrated to Canada. So, in short, that was part of my study of is racism or was slavery in Canada. Um, and of course it was. Uh, and here we have a picture of a young girl in Africville, Nova Scotia. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Africville, it is one of the last slave cities that remain to this day in Nova Scotia. 1793, the Upper Canada Legislature passed an act that granted gradual abolition, and any slave arriving in the province was automatically declared free. Fearing for their safety in the United States after the passage of the first fugitive slave law in 1793, 30,000 slaves came to Canada via the Underground Railroad. However, what many don't know is that flee they fled slavery only to encounter it here. Um, but let's not focus on the negatives today, because today I wanted to take a positive path down history, which takes me to the second link that I had come across, which is 23 historical black Canadians you should know. And this article was done by CBC News. However, it goes a little more in depth here. So the first Afro Canadian that you should be aware of is Mr. Lincoln Alexander. And Lincoln Alexander was a lawyer, member of parliament, cabinet minister, and war veteran. But he is perhaps best known as the former Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. Alexander was the first person from a visible minority to take on the role and the first black member of parliament in Canadian history. However, I tend to differ with that. Shout outs to Jean Augustine. And then there is Marie Joseph Angelique. No picture to provide. Marie Joseph Angelique was a slave who was accused and convicted of starting a 1734 fire that destroyed 46 buildings in Montreal. Although Angelique only confessed to the crime under torture and the evidence against her was circumstantial, she was hanged on June 21st, 1734. Shout outs to Sister Angelique. And some of you may be familiar with this next historical black Canadian, Mr. Donovan Bailey. Shout outs to Mr. Donovan Bailey. I had the privilege of learning from him while I was still in middle school. Donovan Bailey was born in Jamaica and emigrated to Canada as a teenager. He is one of the country's most highly decorated track athletes and once held the world record for the 100-meter sprint. He won 3 world championships in either the 100 and 4x100-meter relay and 2 gold medals in the 96 Olympics. Shout outs to Donovan Bailey. And shout outs to Ben Johnson at that as well. Viola Desmond Davis. Many of you may recognize her from, I believe it's the $10 bill. Viola Desmond was at the center of one of Nova Scotia's most controversial episodes. In 1946, she refused to sit in the balcony of the Roseland Theatre in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, and sat on the floor reserved exclusively for white people instead. She was arrested, found guilty of not paying the full tax on the floor seat tickets. She was jailed and fined. She died in 1965 at the age of 50. And of course, in 2010, the government of Nova Scotia posthumously pardoned Desmond and apologized to her family. Shout outs to Viola Desmond, now featured on the $10 bill. Thornton and Lucy Blackburn. Thornton and Lucy Blackburn were slaves in the United States who escaped their Kentucky owner and settled in Detroit. They then had to escape a second time, this time to Canada after their owner tracked them down and attempted to re enslave them. The Thorntons were allowed to stay in Canada after the court system refused to extradite them to the United States. This was seen nationally and internationally as a symbol of Upper Canada's role as a safe haven for black refugees. Citizenship and Immigration Canada says. No picture provided. Rosemary Brown. Rosemary Brown was a Canadian politician who was born in Jamaica. She served as a member of British Columbia's Legislative Assembly for 14 years and was a candidate for the federal party's leadership in 1974. Brown died in 2003 at the age of 72. Rest in peace, Miss Brown. Anne Cools. Anne Cools was the first black person to become a Canadian senator. Born in Barbados, she arrived in Canada as a teenager and studied at McGill University. Prior to being appointed to Senate, Cools was a candidate for the Liberal Party in two federal elections but was unsuccessful. Pierre Trudeau slash appointed. Just watch my Who's Justin Castro video, and that will you'll catch the laugh. um, Pierre Trudeau appointed her to the Senate in 1984. She switched party alliances in 2004, becoming a conservative senator. Today, she sits as an independent. Shout outs to Ann Cools. Mifflin Winstar Gibbs. No picture provided. Sorry, folks. Mifflin Wistar Gibbs was already a successful businessman when he moved from the United States to British Columbia to escape the racial atmosphere in the U.S. After moving to Victoria, Gibbs became a prominent figure in the black community, its recognized leader according to Citizenship and Immigration Canada. He devoted time and effort to encouraging members of the black community to become involved in politics. He moved back to the States in 1870 and died in 1950. Josiah Henson. Josiah Henson was an American slave who escaped to Canada in 1830. He devoted the rest of his life to helping other former slaves, particularly in terms of developing farms. He also led a militia unit of black men in the Upper Canadian Rebellion of 1837. He died in Dresden, Ontario, 1883, at the age of 93. Sam Langford. Sam Langford was born in Nova Scotia and moved to the United States as a teenager. He was a highly touted heavyweight boxer, though discriminatory policies prevented him from being allowed to contend for championships. Langford continued to box even after an injury led to the loss of sight in his right eye. He died in 1956 at the age of 72. And one of my favorite Canadians here is Mr. Elijah McCoy. Elijah McCoy was born to former slaves who escaped to Canada from the United States. He studied mechanical engineering in Scotland and became known for inventing a device that lubricated a train's moving parts while the train was in motion. He is also credited with inventing the portable ironing boards and held more than 50 patents in total. McCoy died in 1929 at the age of 86. William Hall. William Hall was the first black person to receive the Victoria Cross. He was born in Nova Scotia to former slaves who left the United States because of the War of 1812. He became a sailor in his 20s, eventually joining the Royal Navy. He was awarded the Victoria Cross after securing a British garrison in Lucknow, Indians, or Lucknow, India. Almost sounded Chinese there. While serving on HMS Shannon, Hall was one of the sailors to survive the attack, but was the only one able to continue to fight. He fought until the garrison was safe. Hall died in 1904 at the age of 77. And this one may be familiar to some of my Jamaican friends out there. Michael Lee Chin. Michael Lee Chin is a Canadian businessman and philanthropist. He came to Canada from Jamaica to attend Hamilton's McMaster University. Lee Chin, as he is called, is executive chairman of AIC Limited, chancellor of Wilfrid Laurier University, and is the namesake of the Royal Ontario Museum's Crystal Wing. And as you can see, that is a picture of the crystal wing right there. Donald Oliver. Donald Oliver has been a successful civil litigator and educator. He was appointed to the Senate in 1990 and still lives to this day. Shout out, Mr. Oliver. Big up yourself, man. Cha. Mary Ann Shadd Carey was the first woman to become a publisher in Canada. She arrived in the country as American slaves were escaping to freedom via the Underground Railroad. Devoted herself to teaching the children of former slaves arriving in Canada. She later returned to the United States and was active in the women's suffrage movement. Carey died in Washington in 1893 at the age of 69. Portia White was an acclaimed concert singer and performed concerts across Canada, the U.S. and performed concerts across Canada, the U.S., and Central America. It's almost as if I can't read today. She performed for the Queen at Charlottetown's Confederation Center in 1964. Shout outs to Miss Portia White. Willie O'Ree. Willie O'Ree was born in Fredericton, the first black player in the National Hockey League. O'Ree made his debut with the Boston Bruins in 1957 to 58. O'Ree later played in the Western Hockey League before retiring in 79. Shout outs, brother. Carrie Best. Nova Scotia's Carrie Best was a poet, writer, journalist, and activist. She founded the Clarion, the province's first black-owned and published newspaper. In 1946 and in 52, she began hosting the Quiet Corner radio program, which would run for 12 years. Best was made an Officer of the Order of Canada in 1979. She died in 2001. Shout out Miss Best. You don't know. I feel be the best. John Ware. John Ware was a former slave who settled in Alberta and gained recognition for his skill as a cowboy. He established 2 ranches before his death in 1905. Richard Pierpoint. Richard Pierpoint was sold into slavery in 1760 at the age of 16. He took his surname from an English officer whom he served. Pierpoint was freed after the American Revolution. Began and served as a soldier on the British side. Afterwards, he settled in the Niagara region and suggested the formation of an all-black militia that would fight with the British during the War of 1812. Pierpoint retired to his farm in Garafraxa, Ontario, and died there in 1838. Ferguson Fergie Arthur Jenkins. Ferguson Fergie Arthur Jenkins is one of Canada's most celebrated basketball players. Jenkins, who played for the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago Cubs, was inducted into the National Baseball? Oh, sorry. Jenkins is one of Canada's most celebrated baseball players. Jenkins, who played for the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago Cubs, was inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 1991. Bruni Sarin. Bruni Sarin captured a gold medal in the 4 by 100 meter relay at the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. Sarin, who retired after competing for 17 years, now runs the Bruni Sarin Foundation. And last on the list is James Mink. James Mink was the son of former slaves. He owned Toronto's Mansion Inn and livery, as well as a stagecoach service that transported people and goods between Toronto and Kingston. Later in his life, he posed as his Irish wife's slave in order to rescue their daughter, who had been sold into slavery by her husband. And I think there's one person that's missing from this list, and that is Mr. Charles Roach. He's an activist, um, he's a philanthropist, he's a litigator, and he has done great work in the community um, for blacks. And I added someone of my own to this list. Um, I added Defonte Miller. In case you all forgot, Defonte Miller is the is the youth that was assaulted by an off-duty police officer and his brother and lost his eye. And recently, one of the brothers was convicted. And I'm bringing up this case because it kind of hits hard. And and it shows proof that there is still a tinge of racism in Canada, and that we allow the members of our police force to get away with too much sometimes. This young brother lost his eye. This young king lost his eye. Could have been on the way home with a friend. But because these two gentlemen, one of them being a police officer, for whatever reason, felt the need to corral this young man and bust his eye out, shows the level of entitlement that they feel. And there's some things about this case that was real strange to me. A, the father of these two men is an active SIU officer. Special Investigations. That's the branch that investigates the police. Second thing that was really weird, he was called to the scene of the crime. And his sons were allowed to converse not only with him, but each other. Correct me if I'm wrong. Police officer or not, who gets arrested and they call your dad to come and talk to you at the scene of the crime where someone has lost an eye. And then one of you ends up beating the case. So I think Devontae Miller is definitely a notable Canadian from this point forth because he did something about it. He did not give in. So I guess I'll give you a little bit about. It says a police officer has been found guilty in the beating of a young black man more than 3 years ago, while his brother has been acquitted of all charges. Why do they still refer to him as a police officer? Has he not been fired? And why, when the police are charged, are we still paying their lawyer fees? Anyway, Michael Thurl was convicted of assault on Friday but found not guilty of aggravated assault or obstruction of justice in relation to the December 28, 2016 incident involving Devontae Miller, which left him blinded in one eye. The officer's brother, Christian Thurl, was acquitted of aggravated assault and obstruction of justice. So I have to tear this apart as I go along here because it's bothering me. So, not only were you both allowed to converse with each other at the scene of the crime, which to me is an obstruction of justice. Your father, who is an SIU officer, was allowed to converse with you at the scene of a crime, which is also another obstruction of justice. This assault resulted in the loss of a limb, which to me constitutes an aggravated assault. But you were only convicted of assault. This is Canada. For those of you that don't know, welcome to Canada. Um, wow. Ontario Superior Court Justice Joseph DeLuca said the case and others like it raise significant issues involving race and policing that should be further examined. Wow. All the way in 2016. And we're just starting to raise significant issues involving race and policing that should be further examined. Well, now we're in 2021. Has any of them been examined? But he said, so as much as the judge threw them under the bus, he's quick to cover his tracks. But he said his task was not to conduct a public inquiry on race and policing or to deliver the decisions sought by the public. It was to determine the case based on the evidence. While a decision like this would usually come in court, the COVID pandemic led to the hearing being broadcast live on YouTube with over 19,000 viewers tuning in. After the judge's decision, Miller, now 22, only 22, and his mother held a news conference to show appreciation for the community that supported them. And I quote, "It's meant a lot to me in these last few years," he said. "It's helped me to go forward." Miller recalls the night of the incident and said, "We've come a long way." Now we're in a situation where an officer has been held accountable to some extent. And when he says to some extent, it almost gives me the feeling like at least something's being done. Better than nothing. But I'm saying for you, my brother, it's not enough. Adding that he wants to continue to raise awareness for those who are in his position but may not have the resources and support he has had. And he quotes, I'll quote him. There's a lot of people who are in my position who don't get the same backing that I got and don't get to have their day to really have any vindication for what they're going through. Michael Thiero is currently suspended with pay. The internal disciplinary process, and I'll quote Megan Gray, who is a Toronto police spokesperson. The internal disciplinary process is held until the conclusion of the criminal proceedings, she wrote. No apology. No nothing. Now, I would go on to give Chief Saunders' take on this. But quite frankly, I'm pretty sure I know what he's going to say. And I'm not really interested to hear it. Because an Afro-Canadian chief of police who in his first week in office agrees to the carding of Afro-Canadians, knowing that it's racially biased and it's a racially motivated procedure, I'm not really interested in hearing from. So yes, family, you don't know. We're going to take a quick break. And we will be right back. You don't know. I come back with chat with they have to chat the things. Yeah.
Boy, bad habit, we no pick it up, you know. Throw it down. We no pick it up. No, we don't pick it up, you know. No, we don't pick it up. How them a try for this? Who them a try for this? How them a try for this? Who them a try for this? How them a try for this? How them a try for this? Enough boy them a this. When them see the woman them a call them bitch. Enough woman them a this. When them see the man them say he ain't shit. Bad habit them pull up, bad habit oh. Bad habit and me and tell them stop it oh. Bad habit them pull up, bad.
Nobody now support the kids them like me right now. We no kill youth, we a build youth. Big old man who know me attack too. We a build youth, no we no kill youth. Big man who know me attack too. Send the youth them go to school, make them learn, set them brain at the real world. Then too, not the one where man a pushing on your hand and tell if you kill a mix man, my G that the wrong. Ooh, that me know I'm not maker, that me know for sure. Everything where me reap so far and me grow. On the league board, me up the top score. I'ma not stop right, yeah, something I go give them more. Hey, hey, what we say?
Warrior energy, warrior nation, yeah. One bag of looting and shooting a guan. We you them a dead when I blow no storm. No sound no alarm, you no see where I gone. I kill with one another. Ooh we are see John Tom gun. Him son name Shan. One generation away from the land. Pity you a study up your eyes and chaser. Study figure dance in a jeans and blazer. Youth in a see your meds want change. That's for eraser. School of a chaser. Don't like books, you'd look for a trader. Bill great, don't build failure. A calamity, the little you them head get giddy. Now seek work, them a seek out iniquity.
Yes, family, you don't know. We are back with Come Make We Chat. And we have a special guest lined up for you today. But due to some technical difficulties, it's been that type of week for me. Everything just seems to be working at its own pace, so to speak. So we're going to line that up for you, family. We will be right back in a few minutes, right here on Come Make We Chat. Yeah?
Warrior energy, warrior nation, yeah. One bag of looting and shooting a guan. We you them a dead when I blow no storm. No sound no alarm, you no see where I gwan. I kill with one another. Who we are harm? See John Tom gun, him son name Shan. One generation wipe from the land. Pity you a study up your eyes and chaser. Study figure dance in a jeans and blazer. Youth in a see your meds one changer. That's for eraser. School of a chaser. Don't like books, you look for a trader. Bill great, don't bill failure. A calamity, the little you them head get giddy. Now seek work, them a seek out iniquity.
Seniority. Well, who no listen to me style and to make clarity. Who no listen to me style and to make clarity. When you differentiate and penetrate towards one set of people, not no right, not a evil. And now I see the reason Babylon should be charged with treason for their destructive season that they bear on the people. We ask them who they might call minority, and who they might call minority, cause we are part of the majority. And I'm gonna take this opportunity and make it my priority, and I make them know a seniority. Well, who no listen to me style and to me clarity. Who no listen to me style and to me clarity. Yeah. Try to brainwash me that I'm less than you, and that ain't cool. Like you take me for fool. No way. Walk up, tell me, say, are you rule? Taking me for your everyday tool, and that ain't cool. We ask them who they might call minority, and who they might call minority, cause we are part of the majority. And I'm gonna take this opportunity and make it my priority, and I make them know a seniority. Well, you no listen to me style and to me clarity. You no listen to me, you don't tell me clarity. Oh, yes, no. Them a tell me place when me pay get more. Them be stay rich, I man be stay poor. They pan the bed and I man pan the floor. When me approach them a close all the door, yo. Me get $1, they get all 54. I make me spend the one up in a your store. You relax me, do all the chores. Now when I eat that touch me to the core. By now me think say me woulda have a good report. Now me see here, I know me see the show. Say what? Say that you just can't trust me no more, because things are broke up, it's like a store, like water, people blood all a pour, all the way from the hills to the shore. Yo, we said the lion get mad and now we start to roar, because we just can't take it no more. So me I ask them, who they might call minority, and who they might call minority. Ooh, cause we are part of the majority, and I'm gonna take this opportunity and make it my priority, and I make them know a seniority. Well, you no listen to me style and to me clarity.
Yes, family. General Genius. You know, we have a little more coming back from you in just a moment. And we're going to do it a little bit special. We're going to close down right now. And we're going to come back in about 1 hour. And we're going to bring General Genius to you live right here. and come make we chat. Don't know, family. Stay tuned. We'll be back.